To this information session ahead of MackHack. So my name is Aaron Birkby and I'm the facilitator for MackHack, which is on very soon. It's this weekend, March 6th to 8th. And this is our final information session ahead of the event. So we already had one information session at the very start, which was around, what is the event, who should come along and attend. Then we had the second information session, which was around the competition tracks. And these are the industry challenges that our partners are looking to solve, and that they are basically forming what you will be competing against, the problems that you'll be solving during the weekend. And now this final information session is about how do you get the most out of the weekend? How do you prepare yourself? How, once you're at the weekend, get the most out of it? But also little tips around team formation and IP ownership. So in terms of diving right in, how do we get the most out of the weekend? Well, number one, prepare yourself going in. And this means making sure you're really rested. So the event runs for approximately 48 hours. And yes, you get to go home and sleep on the Friday night and the Saturday night. So we won't keep you up 24 hours. But at the same time, it is really exhausting when you are applying your brain in such a creative and critical thinking way all day. So you will get tired, and that's why it's important to get your sleep and rest coming into the event. So make sure you arrive really well rested. And I'd also add hydrated. So the science behind hydration and drinking at least 2 liters of water every single day shows that it improves our cognitive thinking ability, our problem solving ability, our energy levels, so that we'll actually be more vitalized and perform better if we come into the event, with great nutrition, well hydrated and great sleep. So there's some basic tips. Just sort out your adulting 101. The second thing is to make sure that your home situation is all set up so that you can focus on the event while you're at the event. And what I mean by that is, if you're a parent, you have young kids that you normally look after, or other family members you normally look after, or perhaps you have a pet that might need walking, or if there's a thunderstorm, might need taken care of. The more that you can get others involved to look after your normal responsibilities over the weekend, then the more you can focus while you're at the hackathon. And I'd really encourage you to think about that. What life admin or life logistics do you need to sort out so that you can be 100% present in your mind and your body at the event for the entire weekend? My next tip is to actually read the industry challenges before the weekend. So if you did miss information session 2, where we went through the challenges, you can reach out, grab a copy of the video link for that, and also the slides. But basically read up on the challenges and don't be afraid of doing a bit of research. So start looking at which challenge perhaps resonates with you the most, which one do you think you could contribute or solve the best, and then start doing some research on them. Maybe even look for some other data sets that might be available that you could use to help solve these challenges over the weekend. My next one is about having an open mind. So I think it's really important to come into the event with an open mind, or what I call a growth mindset. And this is where you're really open to learning new things. You're really open to being challenged and accepting that there might be a different and perhaps better way of doing things. Often when we come into these sort of events, we might be coming in with a preconceived idea or a solution in mind. And we might believe that our solution is the best possible solution that's ever existed. But the reality is the most successful teams and the most successful individuals are those that are the most prepared to pivot on what they previously thought. And by pivot, I mean change the solution. It could be an iteration, it could be a small pivot, but it could also be a large pivot. So I'd encourage you to come in with that adaptable growth mindset where you're really keen to take on new ideas. You understand the value of listening to different opinions and then learning from them and adapting your solution to accommodate those different perceptions and the feedback as you get it. The last one I want to say here is bring your friends along. So these things are always more fun when we do them with our friends. Obviously, you're going to get to meet a heap of new people during the event and you'll become very close to them as well. In fact, I've built many new relationships by attending hackathons, built some great friendships that have lasted years and years later. In fact, some of those friendships are over 7 years old now. So definitely have that open mind as well. But if you do know anyone else that you think would contribute to solving some of these challenges or would get a lot out of the event or contribute to it, definitely drag them along, like ring them up right now and encourage them to attend. Even buy them a ticket and just say, look, you're coming, and actually get them to the event with you. Next, in terms of what to bring to the event. So as a bare minimum, I recommend bringing a notebook and pen. So yes, it's old school, it's analog, it's not digital, but you will be taking a lot of notes during the weekend, and just even for ideation, for brainstorming, but definitely around learning. So there's a lot of science about the act of handwriting notes or even drawing concepts actually improves your memory recall of those things that you are learning. Also bring your laptop and remember your charger, bring your mobile phone and again, remember your charger. You might even want to bring your own little battery charging pack if needed, because at some point you might get out of the building to go and consult with industry, for example, or to seek feedback or opinions of others. So being able to charge your devices remotely could also be beneficial. Bring any of your special tools of your trade. So whatever your magic superpower is in your profession, or that something you're just really good at, if you need special tools for that, bring them along. Just keep in mind we don't have a heap of space for everything at the site. But if you have, for example, trackpads that you use for graphic design or particular stylus pens for graphic design, feel free to bring those along as well. Next up as well, a water bottle and a reusable keep cup. So obviously we want to have the smallest impact or negative impact on the environment that we can during the weekend. So we'd really appreciate if everyone can bring along their own reusable drink bottle and reusable coffee or tea cup. That just helps a lot of plastic or prevents a lot of plastic from going to landfill. And again, last thing I'd say there is probably bring some friends. Oh, and the other one is, if you have any data sets or research that you've done, feel free to bring that along to the event too. So, if you have access to other data sets, or you've found through research and found some other potential information that you could use during the event, bring all that along. Next, in terms of some tips for team formation. So obviously, team formation is highly critical. In the startup land in which I work, the majority of startups that fail, the cause of death is actually co-founder disagreement and team fallout. But also, when we're building projects, when we're building solutions and prototypes, obviously there's a variety of skill sets that we need, but there's also a variety of perspectives. And there's a lot of value in having very different perspectives on your team. So on this slide, I share some of the roles and skills that are needed in a high-performing team, because often when we think of a hackathon, we immediately default to a programmer sitting with a large data set of data to analyze or build a prototype. And what I want to convey here is that there's actually so many more skills needed to build an idea that's actually worthy of being implemented, because there's an entire skill set first about understanding the problem correctly, understanding what an implementation might look like, understanding the customer and user needs, which requires a lot of empathy, a lot of emotional intelligence, and a lot of soft skills to actually extract that information from other people. There's also project management skills, business skills around costing the units or costing the product, implementation skills. So as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of things that we need in a well-rounded team. Now, at the same time, you might be able to just form a team with just one or two other people. It might be quite a small team, and you then have to adapt and try to overcome the challenges that a small team faces as well, whereas a large team, again, faces different challenges in terms of communication. In terms of a dream team, like if we think about the skill sets around a dream team, I've listed 4 on this slide, but I'd actually encourage you to think about 5. First of all, the hustler. Now, hustler in a normal startup sense is the person who's out, the business owner almost, or that person who has ownership of the business model, and they're validating and they're selling. In the spirit of a hackathon, the role of the hustler becomes more about the validation. They're looking at, who do I need to talk to confirm that our solution will actually work in this environment? Who do I need to talk to more about discovering the actual problem and getting more detail around the problem? So that will be a great connector. They tend to be someone who's not afraid to go and talk to people, to go and have the awkward conversations. They'll hustle themselves into situations where they can get all the information that's needed. Then you need a hipster. Now, this person's usually very good at design. So they're very focused on the customer experience. What's the user experience like? How do we want our user or customer to feel? Now, I know in a mining context, that can sound a bit odd, but it's that eye for detail around the experience that the product or solution that you've come up with will impart on the people who have to use it. And ultimately, if it's a horrendous experience to use, even if you've solved the problem, it's probably not going to get their sign-off and adoption. Then we have the hacker. When you think of hacker, don't think of someone hacking websites illegally. Think of someone who's just really good at pulling together a prototype so they can bang up something to demonstrate. They can build it, in other words. Even if you're not doing a technical solution this weekend, who on your team is essentially building the service that you're going to offer? Who's building whatever it is that you're delivering? Our next one is a humanitarian. And I think particularly in the mining sector, this one is very important. But now we're seeing, the rise of the role of the humanitarian across all startups in all industries. But this is really the person who's got that social value lens. They're really driven by impact. They also tend to be a questioner. They tend to challenge things and challenge traditional ways of thinking. So they'll be the one that questions existing processes and perhaps comes up with something that's completely left field that has a better way of solving the fundamental problem. And I mentioned a fifth one. So the fifth one here is an industry expert. So if you are lucky enough to have someone from the mining industry on your team who has that deep domain knowledge, obviously that's incredibly beneficial. The reason I didn't put it on this slide in particular is you may not be able to find that. And I want to share that we have a lot of mentors at the event who have a lot of depth of experience in the mining industry. But also what we find is people who have worked in different industries they're often best placed to solve a different industry's challenges. So the challenges that are faced by the mining sector, for example, might have been solved in a very different way in, for example, the healthcare industry. And so having someone from healthcare, which doesn't immediately seem applicable to mining, but with that different lens and then being able to translate a solution in a different way might actually be the game changer for your team. So the point of that is that the diversity in thinking is really valuable. You want to have as many different types of people on your team with different experiences, different domain knowledge, different industry experience, different perspectives, different age groups, different genders, different religions, different whatever it is. Because the more diversity of thinking, the more number of ideas and potential solutions and potential different ways of approaching a problem you're going to have. And that's really valuable. The next slide is tips on how to handle IP, but I'll actually talk about first some other tips for getting the most out of the weekend. So during the weekend, there's going to be a lot of mentors. So make sure you take the time to book in with those mentors, have conversations with those mentors. You will experience mentor whiplash. This is completely normal. And that's where when you ask like 3 mentors for an opinion, you get 17 opinions back and they're all adamant that they're all correct. And it's your job to then filter through that. I'd also encourage you to connect with as many other participants as you can, because the real value of these sort of weekends is what goes on and happens after the weekend. So really make an effort to not just be head down in your code the entire time or head down in your solution or service, but instead actually lift your head up and have some conversations at the meal breaks with the other participants and get to know them. Also really push yourself out of your comfort zone. So there'll be opportunities, for example, to pitch. And if you're not comfortable with public speaking, this is the safest space you will ever get to practice it. So this is the environment where all those things that might scare you on a normal day, you actually get a chance to stand up and practice in a very safe space where we actually encourage failure. So one of the things that I'll be sharing on the Friday night is the whole way that we innovate. And the only way that we can actually innovate, learn, or grow is through failure. It's actually the only mechanism we have. And therefore, actively seeking out opportunities to fail, as counterintuitive as that is actually where the most growth and potential lies. So please have a crack this weekend, like throw yourself in. If there's an opportunity to put your hand up to say yes to something that scares you or that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, go for it. And lastly, teach someone else something. So make sure you take time this weekend, not just to learn and extract value from the event, but really have that give first attitude. Give first through sharing knowledge with other participants. If you know a team is struggling with something, go and donate your time to them to help them with that challenge if you can. If someone has a question you know the answer to, if you can make a connection for another team, as much as this is a competition, the spirit of give first is what enables better outcomes. And ultimately, we all want to build something amazing out of this event. We'd all love to see something incredible come out that goes on to employ everyone at the event. Would be an amazing outcome, for example. So let's live and breathe that spirit of give first, which is a great segue into the final part of this information session, which is talking about how do we deal with IP ownership and, splitting something that we might create? How do we, delve up the share of whatever is created during the weekend? And look, officially speaking, we have no stance on this. It's really up to the participants. So these are simply tips. The event itself, the organisers, myself as facilitator, the industry partners, we have no stance on how you structure your IP, how you share whatever ownership and whatever that looks like for you and your team and your idea. So these are simply tips from my experience delivering previous events. First of all, recognize that most ideas aren't actually novel. So we talk a lot in startup land about ideas are worthless. It's all about execution. The best way to protect your IP is to actually out-execute someone else. So I've delivered a lot of these events. I see teams end up in disputes and arguments over IP ownership in the middle of the event, and those teams just simply never succeed. The teams that succeed are those that get on with the business of actually validating, do we have anything here that's actually worth anything? Because the default state of any idea is actually dead. Any idea actually has zero value until it's commercialized in some way. And that's a lot of work. Right now, you're in this hackathon, you'll be in search mode. You are simply searching to see if your solution could even potentially solve the problem and if it has any potential for adoption afterwards. The majority of work that's needed to actually take your idea and turn it into something will actually happen after this event. And therefore, questions of who owns what, who should have a share of what, really comes down to who needs to be involved for the next 5 years, for example, taking this to market. Because whatever work you do in this weekend, I guarantee will almost be completely changed or rewritten going forward as you move into implementation, should you be lucky enough that your idea even makes it that far. The other thing, in the spirit of the event, this is a public event. So everything that's given is given with this give first attitude. Now, if you're bringing in some special IP or something from your workplace that you're simply not comfortable sharing, then don't share it. We're not going to force you to share IP. If you have some secret source code that is your magic bee's knees or whatever, and you're not comfortable sharing it with others or pitching it in a public way, you could just not pitch it. KFC pitches their model. They talk about their business every day, but they don't reveal their secret herbs and spices. So that's what I mean, where you can package up what makes your secret IP. You can keep that packaged up and just talk about the solution and what it does and the value it delivers. So share what you're comfortable sharing and don't share what you're not comfortable sharing. It's pretty simple. It's also important to understand, though, that every participant's going to be coming in this event with different perspectives and different intentions. Some participants are keen just to come in, to be part of the event, to learn from it, and they're happy going back to their normal lives and normal jobs come Monday morning. Other participants will come in very adamant that this is their opportunity to prove something they've been working on with the potential to then take it forward afterwards. And then even with those different types of intentions and every iteration in between, some people will change their mind over the course of the weekend as well. And it's important that we're all respectful of everyone else's position. So my advice, if I was going to give a tip, is just have these conversations early. As you're forming your teams, which will happen on the Friday night if you're not already pre-formed, have the conversations about what your intent is with the weekend and post-weekend, and have these conversations right up front. I'd encourage you not to worry about IP during the weekend unless you have something novel and potential that you've bought in previously that you want to protect. But otherwise, I'd encourage you, in the spirit of the weekend, just be prepared to pivot and prepared to give first, and then see where you land after the event. That's it from me. I hope I've answered all of your questions. If you do have any more, there's an email here that you can reach out to the event organizers through. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you at MackHack. As I said before, if you haven't already registered, please jump on and register. The earlier register, it just makes our lives easier from organizing everything from t-shirts to catering and everything else. So please jump on and register and bring some friends. So as I said, it is more fun with friends, but also there's more diversity of thinking, which means we get to better outcomes and better solutions. So that's it from me. Enjoy your last few nights of sleep before the event, and I'll see you Friday night for MackHack.